Thanks for coming back. I'm going to continue sharing some of the struggles I had through my high school and college years. But it wasn't all struggles. One of the other things that was happening during those years was that I was very active in our church, very active in our youth group. I was at youth camp every year. I was proactive. I wasn't just a shirt tail Christian. So I left high school feeling called to the ministry. I knew I was called to the ministry. Now, I didn't know what. I didn't know if I was supposed to be a preacher or a youth pastor or what, but when I finally did go to school, I had stayed out of school for a year and saved money, but when I went off to Bible college, I chose a music major because music had been such a big part of my life. I'd been in band for several years, I'd been in choir, I'd participated in music in our church, and so I really felt like that was the appropriate place to be. Now, the problem is that I had a hard time, always I've had a hard time staying the course on anything. And it was no different that time. I went off to Bible college, but I couldn't complete my degree. But I did go and I did get started. And that first year I joined a group called the Harvesters. Now the Harvesters was a magical group sanctioned by the school, created by the school for the purpose of ministering in churches and representing the school, recruiting students. And so primarily our goal was ministry, but we did take the opportunity to represent the school, answer questions, things like that. So for that entire year, I traveled with that group. We sang, we ministered in churches. And I will say this, that in close proximity with just a small group of people, 8 to 10 people, the immaturities that were in my life were just magnified, completely magnified. People in the group, like I wore them out. And that is another one of the identifiers of my immature behavior, is those things would exhaust people. Even to this day, I still deal with those behaviors that wear people out. And in that group, I wore people out. It was hard not to be immature. It was hard not to be needy and demanding. And that's how I was. I was very much like a little child demanding his own way. And so whenever I got into interpersonal situations, especially one-on-one situations in which things didn't go my way, I reacted very poorly. And that's happened to me most of my life. It's only been in the last few years that I've really been able to deal with that and start to come out of those behaviors. But back then it was very glaring. It was very glaring. I remember during spring break of the second semester, we traveled the entire week. It was, pretty much from the Friday of spring break until the Sunday we got back. And so we had a lot of dates, a lot of traveling. It was tiring. And I remember there was one service that we were going to minister. I remember what night of the week it was, but it was in Searcy, Arkansas. And I remember going, and I was so affected, so brooding, just like my dad had done, that I was not going to sing. I was depressed. I was discouraged. I was angry. I don't even remember what prompted that or how that happened, but that's what was going on in my life. And I was not going to sing. I couldn't go on. But at the last minute, the very last minute, I decided to go on. And during one of the numbers that we did, the Holy Spirit, he really fell. He really just came over the entire place. And it surprises me because I was acting like a kid, like a child. I was demanding my own way. I was out of line. I was not in relationship with God in a true sense. And yet the Holy Spirit manifests himself in that service in such a powerful way. And I remember the pastor began laying hands on people, the pastor of that church, and he laid his hands on me. And he said, if you will surrender your holy hands and your holy feet and all your other members unto him, he will win a harvest through you. Now, I always took that to mean through the music, through acting, through some of the other artistic methods that I was using to minister. But as I would learn later, it was not about that. Not at all about that. But as I alluded to before, that time at Southwestern, it ended abruptly. I couldn't afford to pay for it. And I didn't have the faith to believe for what God could do to keep me there. And I didn't have the strength or the maturity to work hard in a job to pay for it. I didn't know what to do, to tell you the truth. I was kind of floating around in my life at that time. So I left school after a year and a half, and man, after that, I moved all the time. I never stayed in a place more than a year or two. And even if I moved to a city where I stayed for more than a year, more than 5 years, I was constantly moving from one apartment or one house to another. I never stayed put. I never could stay put. And I was restless. I was shiftless. And I did find myself able to work a job for a while. I volunteered as a youth volunteer in a church for a while. And each time that I did that, the same type of things would happen. I would get in close proximity with a small group of people, and within that group, I would rub people the wrong way. My immaturity, my obnoxious behaviors, they would just, like for lack of a better term, they just wore people out, man. I had no friends. I had no close friends. I didn't know how to be a friend. I didn't know how to receive a friend. I didn't believe that anyone really wanted to be my friend. I was just insecure. I was more insecure than anybody I've ever known, except maybe my own father. And as maybe you're picking up on, many of the behaviors and the reasons, the motives of my father became my own. And I became so much like my dad. This person that I tried so hard not to be like, I became just like him. I would find myself always brooding, always being manipulative, always reacting in a way that was irrational to the situation when I didn't get my own way. And that continued. Again, like I said, through the next couple of decades. It's only been through my 40s that I've been able to identify those behaviors and just give in to the Lord's work in my life and allow those things to go away. But as I got out of the ministry because of the same situation, those same things would happen. I would become a youth pastor, but I couldn't stay very long because I would become just like the kids. I was so immature. I was ineffective. I didn't study. I didn't work hard. I didn't challenge them, and there would be times when we were supposed to be working on something, a play or another project, and I blew it off. I just played. I had fun with the kids as if I was one of them, not holding anyone accountable, not being a leader in any way. Again, all of these immature behaviors, these behaviors that were appropriate to someone many years younger than I was at the time. And those things, they happened over and over again. They never stopped. And so I found myself working in a normal marketplace, out of the ministry, having met a woman who was in a very similar situation that I was in, emotionally, spiritually, stunted growth, and we ended up married, and we had a child. And that marriage didn't last long. It lasted less than 2 years. By the time my daughter was 9 months, I was separated. And it was because of the same behaviors that I'd been displaying year after year after year. And I had to take a good hard look at myself. Once I got married, before we were separated, I was working a job. It may have been about the time I was separated. I was working a job at a shoe store, a retail store, a lot of pressure, very, very big location, a lot of pressure. And, you know, I remember having an argument with my boss, my manager. And this was one of the ways that I would wear people out, is I was very, very argumentative. And because I was an intelligent person, the arguments that I would make had just enough truth to attack the point the other person was trying to make, but the rest of it was all manipulative behavior. It was all acting out by me not getting my own way. It was just filled with lies and manipulation, but just enough truth to be plausible and to make it difficult for that other person to respond back to me. And I butted heads with my boss that day, and he was also an extremely intelligent person. So when I would go to him, he would come back at something with me. When I would come back to something with him, he would come back to something with me. But finally he did. He got worn out, so exasperated. He looked at me and he said, "Randall, if you think everyone is crazy, maybe you're the one who's crazy." And he was right. I was the common denominator in every tough situation I'd ever been in. And on one hand, I had to face the fact that I needed to change. On the other hand, it was easy to blame my dad. So even though that statement always has stayed with me, and even though it had a huge impact on my life, it could not generate the change that I was looking for. And I will talk to you a little bit more about that in the next video.